let your light shine. Something we've heard over and over again. Many of us, those of us who grew up in church, are familiar with the children's song that Debbie used this morning in children's moments at 8:30. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Is your light shining? Sometimes we forget just how important it is for light to shine. How we miss the everyday easiness of light in our life. We enter a sanctuary that's brightly lit with sunshine. If it's night, we turn on the lights. And even on the other side of the stained glass windows at night, we get all the bright colors because of the light that is within. The light that is shining within. Yet for some reason, sometimes we try to hide our light. Our prayer this morning included confession of ways that we do not allow our light to shine in this world. Often because fear has driven out a place for that light to shine, or our anxiety, our willingness to protect ourselves and to wall ourselves off. One person that I read this week commented that part of it is we don't want our light to shine until we believe it has been perfected, and therefore we keep it hidden. In the text, the term "a bushel basket put over your light," put over a lamp, is used. That can be risky business in itself. If you don't believe me, I know a pastor who tried this. She put a candle on the table, put a bushel basket over it, came out and started talking to her congregation, and watched as their faces changed with horror as they saw the basket catch on fire behind her. So no, I am not going to attempt any baskets over a candle. But I think it's not just baskets that we use to try to hide. Sometimes we even try to let our light be seen, but still keep those walls up in an attempt to protect ourselves, to keep from being vulnerable, to keep our distance from others. And that's dangerous in its own way, because when we attempt to project this image, our light is being seen, but we cut ourselves off from the rest of the world, from the fuel that we need in study, in prayer with others, and in relationship with others. It can become very dangerous. The other one. That one. This. While we might light our candle and be determined that it is burning brightly, we can leave it out there. It can be hard to be seen. It can be small. But right now, there's still a flickering flame there. But sometimes in our attempt to wall off the world, even when we want to be seen, if we wall off the world, we will suffocate the flame. It simply won't have enough oxygen. It's not getting what it needs, and it's not burning with the flame that could be. So sometimes we put a bushel basket or something that can't be seen through over our light. Other times we might put something clear over it. but then we will drown out the flame. The call is not to put our light under something else, but to put it on a lampstand where it can be seen. We tend to take light for granted, that it'll keep burning. But we miss the value of light, particularly in Jesus' day. There was a study where people wanted to know what is the value of light and to look at it over time. And so they began with a Babylonian time frame, so more of a biblical time frame, where a clay lamp would hold oil and would be burned. As long as there was enough oil, it would burn. So they wondered, how much light would you get with a day's wages? How much light could you get? And they determined that you could have gotten 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes if you were really lucky, out of a day's wages. That is all the light that you could purchase. That all began to change as they learned how to have kerosene, to get it from coal or oil so that it would burn cleanly. And it changed to the point where a day's wage might get you 4 or 5 hours of light. Not bad, but that's taking a whole day's wage. In our world, a day's wage will get you approximately 20,000 hours of light. It's more than 2 years' worth of light. So you see, it is easy for us to take for granted how valuable light is. It is something ordinary. And throughout Epiphany, we talk about light revealing who God is, sometimes in very ordinary terms that have become extraordinary, such as a star that leads wise men to the Christ child, such as a dove that comes down during Jesus' baptism. There are these moments when light reveals to us who God really is, but we have to see the light. It would be easy for us to sing, "This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine," and assume that it is for someone else to let their light shine. In fact, most often when I've read this, the thought has been, but it can't be my light. It has to be Christ's light. And that is true. It does have to be the light Christ produces within us. But a seminary friend wrote in response to a Facebook post this week that it is our light. It is the light that Christ has put within us and that we have claimed. It is the gifts that God has given us to share that light. And the unique combination of gifts and light in our lives is something that can be unique to each of us. And if we put that light out or hide that light, others may not see God's glory and grace through us shining our light. Now, keep in mind, my friend's Lutheran, so she didn't want it to sound of too much law, nor do we want this to sound like it is our works that save us. Instead, it is the gift of Christ in our life. The gift of Christ entering the world to bring forth light. Each year before Christmas Eve, I end up relearning John 1. Christ is the light. And he is the life of all things. He's the light which enlightens everyone. And through him, we have seen the Father's glory. This is how we see through Christ. Now, granted, John's gospel was probably written at least 20 years after Matthew's gospel. And they talk about light a little differently. But they're pointing out that Christ has put something within us that we are to share. Christ's light in our lives comes from Christ being willing to be vulnerable, to leave heaven to come to earth in the form of an infant, to walk alongside others and proclaim that which would make those with power angry, to walk alongside those who others did not care to see or speak for, and to speak on their behalf. All the way to the point of going to a cross and being vulnerable in death that we might have life. The cost for us to have Christ's light is very, very high. But it's given to us as a gift. And this gift withers away if we put it under a basket or if we try to separate ourselves from the rest of the world. It is meant to be on a lampstand where others can see it. Yet that's vulnerable for us. And many of us, the last thing we want to do is to be vulnerable. We talk about putting something out on a lampstand. Well, it could get knocked over. The breeze could come through and blow the flame out. People could simply walk away. And yes, the same thing is true in our own lives. If we let Christ's light shine within us, it might get ignored. We might get bumped and hurt. And we run the risk of isolating ourselves in a way that could cause others not to see the light, for it to be extinguished. Instead, we are called to put our light out there, to make it available for others. What does that look like? In a world where we often see darkness, in a world where we declare that things are not as they should be, in a world where we hear people tear one another down, in a world where our differences divide us more than Christ unifies us at times, our letting the light shine can be as simple as a smile on our face, a hug, a listening ear, some compassion. It can be as daring as speaking out for those who do not have a voice. To enter the controversy and speak the truth that we've heard through Christ. It comes in all kinds of ways. We talked a little bit about light having value. How much light could be purchased? 10 minutes worth? A few hours worth? A couple of years worth? But the reality is the light that we have to offer others is priceless. The old MasterCard commercials would have some grand adventure, and the price, priceless. Because it was the experience of the event. It is how others experience Christ in us that can become priceless. One of the other things that I've seen several times this week is a picture of a light shining into the darkness. And the caption is simply, the person who shines a light in someone's darkness will never be forgotten. Think about those people who have shown light into the darkest parts of your life. When you weren't sure if you could see beyond your own 2 feet. They may not have had a lot of light, but they at least came and stood beside you and took that step with you. It may have been the person that was young in the grocery store line who came up, smiled, and helped carry a bag of groceries that prompts the comment, "It's good to see someone young doing this." Someone who had given up on youngsters who suddenly discovered, no, there is still light there. There are those who have given up on us as churches because the witness they see does not match what they believe Christ should look like. All it takes is one person being real and authentic and caring for them in ways that show them that the church is still alive and filled with Christ's light. Maybe the hardest part of all of what this passage tells us is that we are to let our light shine, our truth be seen. Our truth that is that Jesus Christ came, taught, died for us, and was raised again that we might have life and have it abundantly. That what is ordinary, our everyday ordinary lives, might be extraordinary because Christ's light can shine in and through us. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Where does your light shine? Where has light been put brightly before you? Where do you see darkness that needs light, that needs to bring someone to bring light into its midst? In John 1, we hear the words that the darkness did not overcome the light. How will we take our light into the world and push back on the darkness? And let light shine. You see, Christ came and shone the true light for us. But in Matthew's gospel, Jesus tells us to risk being vulnerable, to connect with others in such a way that light shines in and through us and transforms the world around us. He tells us to let our light shine. Let your light shine. Amen.